The chamber was a hollowed-out moon, its interior polished to a mirror sheen that reflected the swirling nebulae outside the grand viewing portals. At its center, suspended in a shimmering field of gravitic energy, was the High Council of the Xylos hegemony. They were beings of crystalline intellect and ancient lineage, their forms shifting like liquid metal, their thoughts a silent cascade of light and shadow. For millennia, they had presided over a vast and orderly empire, their dominion stretching across 1,000 star systems, their authority unquestioned. But now, for the first time in their long and storied history, they knew fear. It was a cold, alien emotion, a discordant note in the symphony of their collective consciousness, and it had a name: humanity. The silence in the chamber was a living thing, a predatory entity that coiled around the hearts of the council members. It had been weeks since the incident, weeks since the ill-fated pacification of a fledgling human colony on a world they had designated as Xylos 734. It was supposed to have been a simple matter, a routine assertion of their authority, a demonstration of their benevolent yet firm rule. The humans were a young species, barely out of their cradle, their technology primitive, their understanding of the galaxy laughably naive. Or so they had thought. The reports from the fleet had been confusing, contradictory. The colony had been pacified, yes, but at a cost that was still being calculated. And then the silence. A profound, unsettling silence from the direction of Earth, the human homeworld. No threats, no demands, no desperate pleas for mercy. Just nothing. The High Counselor, a being of immense age and wisdom whose form shimmered with the light of a captive star, finally broke the stillness. Its voice was not a sound, but a wave of pure thought that resonated in the minds of all present. The silence from the humans persists. Our auguries are clouded. Our long-range sensors detect nothing but the mundane ebb and flow of interstellar traffic. It is as if they are ignoring us. The thought was laced with a bewilderment that bordered on disbelief. The Xylos were not accustomed to being ignored. They were the architects of galactic peace, the arbiters of cosmic law. To be met with such profound indifference was an insult that cut deeper than any declaration of war. Another counselor, its form a swirling vortex of obsidian and silver, projected a thought of sharp, cold logic. Indifference is a weapon, High Counselor, a weapon of the mind. It is designed to unnerve, to create uncertainty. The humans are not ignoring us. They are preparing. They are studying us, learning our weaknesses, devising a strategy that we cannot anticipate. The thought was met with a murmur of agreement from the other counselors. The fear that had been lurking in the shadows of their minds was beginning to take shape, to coalesce into a tangible threat. They had underestimated the humans, a mistake that the Xylos, for all their wisdom, had made before with other lesser species. But this felt different. There was a quality to the humans, a resilience, a stubborn refusal to bow to the inevitable that was both infuriating and unsettling. "We acted within our rights," another counselor interjected, its form a radiant sphere of golden light. "The colony was established in a sector that was clearly designated as a Xylos protectorate. We gave them ample warning. We followed all the proper protocols. Their refusal to comply was an act of aggression." The thought was a weak attempt at self-justification, a desperate clinging to the familiar comfort of law and order in the face of an unknown and unpredictable adversary. But even as the words were projected, they rang hollow in the vast emptiness of the chamber. The Xylos had always prided themselves on their enlightened approach to galactic governance, on their ability to resolve conflicts through reason and diplomacy. But in their dealings with the humans, they had resorted to brute force, to the crude and unsophisticated methods of a lesser species. And now they were beginning to suspect that they had made a terrible, a catastrophic miscalculation. The debate continued for what felt like an eternity, a swirling vortex of fear and recrimination. The Xylos, for all their advanced intellect, were trapped in a cycle of their own making, their pride and arrogance blinding them to the true nature of the species they had so casually dismissed. They spoke of military options, of preemptive strikes, of shows of force that would finally cow the humans into submission. But with each suggestion, the sense of unease grew, the feeling that they were playing a game whose rules they did not understand. The humans were an enigma, a puzzle that defied all their attempts at logical analysis. They were a species that had clawed its way up from the mud of a single planet, a species that had endured countless wars, plagues, and self-inflicted catastrophes, and had emerged not broken, but stronger, more determined, more human. And then it happened. A single, clear, and unambiguous message, cutting through the chaotic chatter of the council chamber like a shard of ice. It was not a transmission in the conventional sense, not a wave of energy that could be traced or deciphered. It was a thought, A single, powerful, and utterly alien thought projected directly into the minds of every Xylos in the chamber, in the system, in the entire hegemony. It was a voice that was not a voice, a presence that was not a presence, and it spoke with a calmness that was more terrifying than any scream of rage. "We are coming." The message was not a threat. It was a statement of fact, a simple, irrefutable declaration of intent. And in that moment, the Xylos hegemony, the most powerful empire in the galaxy, knew, with a certainty that chilled them to their crystalline cores, that their civilization was about to be obliterated. Not by fire and war, not by the crude instruments of destruction that they had so carelessly wielded against the human colony, but by something far older, far more powerful, and far, far more terrifying. They were about to face the vengeance of a species that had mastered the one weapon that the Xylos, for all their power and wisdom, had never even conceived of: the weapon of the soul. The arrival of the human fleet was not the cataclysmic event the Xylos had anticipated. There was no thunderous roar of engines, no blinding flash of weapons fire, no grand and terrible spectacle of destruction. Instead, there was only a quiet, almost reverent procession of ships, appearing out of the void as if they had always been there, their forms sleek and elegant, their hulls shimmering with a light that seemed to come from within. They were not warships, not in the sense that the Xylos understood the term. They were more like temples, or perhaps cathedrals. Each one was a work of art, a testament to a level of craftsmanship and aesthetic sensibility that was utterly alien to the Xylos' utilitarian and pragmatic worldview. The human ships arranged themselves in a perfect, silent sphere around the hollowed-out moon that served as the Xylos' seat of power. They made no move to attack, no attempt to communicate. They simply waited. And in their waiting there was a power, a confidence, a serene and unshakable self-assurance that was more intimidating than any display of military might. The Xylos, for their part, were paralyzed with a mixture of fear and awe. Their own fleets, which had once seemed so invincible, so utterly dominant, now looked like crude, clumsy toys in comparison to the silent, graceful sentinels that had surrounded them. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a single human ship detached itself from the sphere and moved slowly, deliberately, towards the grand viewing portal of the council chamber. It was smaller than the others, but it radiated an aura of authority that was unmistakable. As it drew closer, the Xylos could see that its hull was not made of metal or any other material they could identify. It was alive. It pulsed with a soft, gentle light, and its surface was covered in intricate patterns that shifted and changed like the currents of a deep and mysterious ocean. A channel of communication opened, not through any technological means, but through a direct mind-to-mind connection. The voice that spoke was the same one that had delivered the chilling message weeks earlier. It was calm, measured, and devoid of any discernible emotion. "We are the representatives of the human species. We have come to discuss the matter of your recent transgression against our colony on the world you call Xylos 734. The High Counselor, summoning all of its courage, responded in kind. "We are prepared to offer reparations. We are prepared to cede territory, to share technology, to do whatever is necessary to atone for our mistake." The thought was a desperate plea, a last-ditch attempt to salvage something from the ruins of their pride. The human voice was unrelenting. "We are not interested in reparations. We are not interested in territory or technology. We are interested in justice." "And what is your justice?" the High Counselor asked, a tremor of fear running through its crystalline form. The human response was simple and devastating: understanding. And with that single word, the obliteration of the Xylos civilization began. It was not a physical destruction, but a deconstruction of their entire worldview, a systematic dismantling of every belief, every assumption, every core tenet of their long and storied history. The humans did not use weapons. They used knowledge. They opened up their minds, their memories, their entire collective consciousness, and they showed the Xylos everything. They showed them the birth of their species, the long, slow, and painful climb from the primordial ooze to the stars. They showed them their triumphs and their failures, their moments of sublime beauty and their moments of unspeakable cruelty. They showed them their art, their music, their literature, their philosophy. They showed them what it meant to be human. The Xylos were inundated with a flood of information, of emotions, of experiences that they could barely comprehend. They saw the love of a mother for her child, the fierce loyalty of a soldier for his comrades, the quiet dignity of an old man facing death. They saw the laughter, the tears, the joy, the sorrow, the infinite and paradoxical complexity of the human heart, and they saw the rage. A deep, primal, and righteous rage, born of millennia of suffering and injustice. A rage that was not directed at the Xylos, but at the universe itself, at the cold, indifferent cosmos that had spawned them and then left them to fend for themselves. The humans showed the Xylos the colony on Xylos 734. They showed them the families, the children, the hopes and dreams that had been so casually extinguished. They did not show them images of violence or destruction. They showed them absence. The empty chairs at a dinner table, the silent playgrounds, the half-finished works of art. They showed them the void that the Xylos had created, the gaping wound in the fabric of human existence. And they made the Xylos feel it. They made them feel the grief, the loss, the unbearable weight of their own actions. For the first time in their long and emotionless existence, the Xylos wept. They wept for the humans they had wronged, for the lives they had so carelessly destroyed. But more than that, they wept for themselves. They wept for their own blindness, their own arrogance, their own profound and unforgivable ignorance. They had thought themselves gods, but they were nothing more than children, playing with forces they did not understand. The process of understanding lasted for what felt like centuries. The human ships remained in their silent vigil, their living hulls pulsing with a soft, gentle light, as the Xylos civilization slowly, painfully, and irrevocably unraveled. The hegemony collapsed, not through war or rebellion, but through a collective crisis of faith. The Xylos could no longer believe in their own superiority, in their own manifest destiny. They had seen the truth, and the truth had shattered them. When it was over, when the last vestiges of their old identity had been stripped away, the humans finally spoke again. "Now you understand," the calm, measured voice said. "Now you are ready to begin." The Xylos, humbled and broken, looked out at the silent, waiting ships, and for the first time they saw not an enemy but a teacher, a guide, a species that had transcended the petty squabbles of the galaxy, a species that had found a new and better way to exist. And in that moment of profound and utter surrender, they knew that their obliteration had not been an end, but a beginning. It was the beginning of their redemption. It was the beginning of their humanity. The years that followed were a period of unprecedented change and transformation for the Xylos. Under the quiet and unobtrusive guidance of the humans, they began to rebuild their civilization, not on the old foundations of pride and arrogance, but on the new principles of empathy, compassion, and understanding. They learned to feel, to love, to create art, to appreciate the beauty of a sunset, the taste of a fresh-picked fruit, the sound of laughter. They learned, in essence, to be alive. The humans did not rule over them. They did not impose their own culture or their own laws. They simply were. They were a constant, silent presence, a living example of the new way of being that they had shown the Xylos, and slowly, painstakingly, the Xylos began to emulate them. They shed their old, shifting forms and adopted new, more stable ones, bodies that could experience the world in all its sensory richness. They abandoned their cold, sterile cities and built new ones, vibrant and chaotic, filled with art, music, and the messy, unpredictable, and glorious tapestry of life. It was not an easy process. There were those who resisted, who clung to the old ways, who saw the humans as a corrupting influence. But they were a dwindling minority. The vast majority of the Xylos embraced the change, for they had seen the truth and they could not unsee it. They had been given a gift, a second chance, and they were determined not to squander it. The alliance between the humans and the Xylos became the cornerstone of a new galactic order, an order based not on power and domination, but on mutual respect and cooperation. Other species, seeing the profound transformation of the once feared hegemony, were drawn to this new way of thinking, and the galaxy, for the first time in its long and bloody history, began to know a true and lasting peace. But the universe is a vast and mysterious place, and there are always new challenges, new threats, new frontiers to be explored. And so it was that, in the midst of this newfound era of peace and prosperity, a new and terrifying mystery emerged. It began as a faint, almost imperceptible signal, a whisper from the deepest, darkest corners of the void. It was a signal that was older than the stars, older than the galaxy itself, and it spoke of a power that was beyond comprehension, a power that was both terrifying and beautiful. The humans, with their advanced understanding of the cosmos, were the first to detect it. They did not know what it was or where it came from, but they knew that it was important. They knew that it was a message, a warning, a harbinger of things to come, and they knew that they could not face it alone. And so the humans and the Xylos, the two most powerful species in the galaxy, joined forces once more, not as victor and vanquished, but as equals, as partners, as friends. They built a new kind of ship, a vessel that was a fusion of human and Xylos technology, a ship that could travel to the very edge of the universe, to the source of the mysterious signal. It was a ship of exploration, of discovery, of hope. And as it set out on its long and perilous journey, the humans and the Xylos stood side by side, their hearts filled with a mixture of fear and excitement, ready to face whatever lay ahead together. They had been forged in the crucible of conflict, their two civilizations forever intertwined by an act of terrible violence. But from the ashes of that conflict, something new and beautiful had been born, a bond of friendship, a promise of a shared future, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, but as long as they had each other, they knew that they would be able to face whatever challenges came their way. For they were the children of Earth and Xylos, the heirs to a legacy of both destruction and creation, and they were ready to write their own story, a story of hope, of courage, and of the indomitable will to survive, to thrive, and to reach for the stars. The great vessel, a testament to the combined genius of two civilizations, slipped through the folds of spacetime, its journey a silent ballet of cosmic proportions. On board, a council of humans and Xylos, now indistinguishable in their shared purpose and evolving forms, monitored the ancient signal, its patterns growing more complex, more insistent, as they drew nearer to its source. The signal was not a language in the conventional sense, but a series of mathematical and philosophical concepts, a tapestry of pure thought that spoke of a civilization so ancient, so advanced, that it made the Xylos' hegemony, even at its zenith, seem like a fleeting dream. The journey was long, and in the quiet, shared moments between the monitoring of the signal, the humans and the Xylos delved deeper into the philosophical implications of their shared history. The Xylos, with their newfound capacity for emotion, often expressed a profound and abiding guilt for their past actions. "We were empty," a Xylos counselor, its form now a warm, glowing amber, once projected. "We had knowledge but no wisdom. We had power but no purpose. We were a cancer, a blight upon the galaxy. You did not destroy us. You healed us." A human counselor, an old woman with eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes, smiled gently. "We did not heal you. We simply showed you the path. You were the ones who chose to walk it, and in doing so you have taught us a valuable lesson as well. We had forgotten the fragility of life, the preciousness of a single moment. We had become so focused on the grand sweep of history, on the cosmic dance of stars and galaxies, that we had lost sight of the small, simple things that give life meaning. You have reminded us of what it means to be alive, and for that, we are eternally grateful." It was a sentiment that was echoed throughout the ship, a shared understanding that both species had been enriched by their encounter, that their conflict had, in a strange and paradoxical way, been a catalyst for their mutual evolution. They were no longer two separate species, but two sides of the same coin, two halves of a greater whole. And as they journeyed into the unknown, they did so not with the arrogance of conquerors, but with the humility of pilgrims, seeking not to dominate, but to understand. Finally, after a journey that had spanned a significant portion of their lives, they arrived at the source of the signal. It was not a star, not a planet, not any celestial body that they could recognize. It was a structure, a megastructure of impossible size and complexity, a Dyson sphere that enclosed not a single star, but an entire galaxy. Its surface was a shimmering, iridescent tapestry of light and energy, and it pulsed with a power that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. As they approached, a new signal emanated from the structure, a signal that was not a message, but an invitation. A gateway opened in the surface of the sphere, a portal of pure light that beckoned them to enter. With a shared sense of trepidation and wonder, they guided their ship through the gateway and into the heart of the ancient mystery. What they found inside was beyond their wildest imaginings. It was a universe in miniature, a galaxy teeming with life, with civilizations so diverse, so advanced, that it defied all their preconceived notions of what was possible. And at the center of it all, there was a consciousness, a being of pure thought, of infinite wisdom, the architect of this incredible creation. It spoke to them, not with a voice, but with a wave of pure, unadulterated truth that washed over them, cleansing them of all their doubts and fears. It told them of the true nature of the universe, of the great cycle of creation and destruction, of the endless dance of life and death. It told them that they, the humans and the Xylos, were not the first to have made this journey, and that they would not be the last. And it told them that their own conflict, their own story of destruction and redemption, was but a single, fleeting note in the grand symphony of the cosmos. And then it showed them the true threat. Not an invading army, not a malevolent entity, but entropy, the slow, inexorable decay of the universe, the heat death that would eventually consume all things. It was a threat that could not be fought with weapons, a foe that could not be reasoned with. It was the ultimate, inescapable fate of all existence. But the ancient consciousness did not speak of despair. It spoke of hope. It told them that while the universe may be finite, the spirit of life was not. It told them that their purpose, their destiny, was not to conquer the universe, but to preserve it. To gather the fading embers of life, to nurture them, to protect them from the encroaching darkness, and to carry them forward into the next great cycle of creation. It was a task of unimaginable scope, a responsibility that would test them to their very limits. But as they looked at each other, the humans and the Xylos, they knew that they were not alone. They were part of a great and ancient lineage, a fellowship of life that stretched back to the dawn of time. And they were ready to take their place in that lineage, to become the guardians of the flame, the shepherds of the stars. As they left the Dyson sphere, their hearts were filled with a sense of purpose that was both humbling and exhilarating. They had been given a glimpse of the true meaning of existence, and they had been entrusted with a sacred duty. The galaxy was no longer a collection of warring factions, but a single, fragile ecosystem, a precious garden that they had been chosen to tend. The journey back was a time of quiet reflection and planning. They knew that their work would not be easy, that there would be many challenges ahead. But they also knew that they had the strength, the wisdom, and the courage to face whatever came their way. For they were the children of two worlds, the inheritors of two proud traditions, and they were united by a common purpose, a shared destiny. And so they returned to their home galaxy, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as gardeners. They began the slow, patient work of spreading the message of hope, of unity, of the great and terrible beauty of the universe. And as they did, they found that they were not alone. Other species, hearing their story, were inspired to join them, to add their own unique voices to the growing chorus of life. The galaxy was transformed, not through war or conquest, but through a shared act of creation. And as the eons passed and the stars began to fade, they stood together, a silent, watchful fellowship, their hearts filled with a quiet joy, a profound and abiding peace. For they knew that while their own lives may be finite, the legacy of life would endure. And in the end, that was all that mattered. They had faced their own darkness and had emerged into the light. And now they were ready to share that light with the universe, to become a beacon of hope in the encroaching night. The vengeance of Earth had not been an act of destruction, but an act of creation, an act of love. And it had not just saved a single species, but had redeemed a galaxy and had given it a new and glorious future. The story of humanity and their unlikely friendship with the Xylos would be told for as long as there were stars in the sky, a testament to the enduring power of the human heart and the infinite capacity of the universe to surprise, to inspire, and to awe. Their children, a new species born of the union of human and Xylos, would carry their legacy forward into the endless, starlit night, their hearts filled with the same courage, the same hope, the same unquenchable thirst for knowledge and understanding that had brought their two parent species together so long ago. And the universe in its infinite wisdom would smile upon them, for they were its children, its guardians, its future. And they were at last home.